February 11th, 1963. London, 6 a.m. A woman walks upstairs in a freezing flat. She tapes her children's bedroom door shut. She leaves bread and milk by their beds. She writes the name of her doctor on a slip of paper and pins it to the pram. Then she goes back down to the kitchen. By 9 a.m., she is dead. She is 30 years old. She has just finished writing 40 of the most violent poems in the English language. Her name is Sylvia Plath, and the version of her story you've been told, the mad poetess, the betrayed wife, the casualty of Ted Hughes, is wrong. What killed Sylvia Plath did not happen in 1963. It happened in 1940, when she was 8 years old, and no one took her to the funeral. To understand what happened in that London kitchen, you have to go back 23 years, to a small house in Winthrop, Massachusetts, to a man named Otto Plath, Sylvia's father. He was German. He came to America at 16. He worked his way through poverty, through languages, through universities. By the time Sylvia was born in 1932, Otto was a professor at Boston University. His specialty was insects, more precisely bumblebees. He published a book about them. It is still cited. At home, he kept jars of specimens floating in formaldehyde. A daughter who grew up in that house grew up around small bodies preserved against time. Otto demanded silence while he worked. He demanded order at the table. He was loved, but at a distance. The way you love a man who is also a kind of weather. In 1940, when Sylvia was 8, Otto's legs started to fail. He decided, without consulting any doctor, that he had cancer. He refused examinations. He refused treatment. For months, he watched his own body collapse and called it inevitable. When the doctors finally got to him, the diagnosis was not cancer. It was diabetes, treatable, manageable, survivable. By then it was too late. His leg was amputated. 3 weeks later, he was dead. Sylvia was 8 years old. Her birthday had been the week before. And then her mother, Ariel, made a decision that would mark her daughter forever. She did not take Sylvia to the funeral. She believed it would be too much. What it became instead was a hole that nothing could ever fill, because nothing had ever been allowed to close. Sylvia did not get to see the body. She did not get to say goodbye. She did not get to be angry at a man for choosing his pride over his life. She got an empty chair, a quieter house, and a mother who had decided on her behalf that grief was something private. What happens to a child who is not allowed to mourn? In Sylvia's case, she became excellent. She wrote her first published poem at 8, the same year Otto died. She got straight A's. She won prizes. She filled scrapbooks. By the time she arrived at Smith College in 1950, she was the kind of student professors talked about in the hallways. Beautiful, disciplined, funny, ambitious in a way young women were not supposed to be in the 1950s. In the summer of 1953, she won a guest editorship at Mademoiselle magazine in New York. It was the dream, the proof, the next door opening. She came home from that summer and was rejected from a Harvard writing course, and something in her gave way. One afternoon in late August, she left a note for her mother. She took a bottle of sleeping pills from a locked cabinet. She crawled into the crawl space beneath the family house, and she disappeared. For 3 days, no one could find her. Police searched the woods. Her brother searched the neighborhood. On the 3rd day, her brother heard a sound under the floor. She had survived, barely. She woke up in a hospital, then in McLean Asylum. She was given insulin shock. She was given electroconvulsive therapy. She would later write about it as a violation she carried for the rest of her life. She was 20 years old. What is striking about Sylvia Plath is not the breakdown, it is what she did after. She went back to Smith. She graduated summa cum laude. She won a Fulbright to Cambridge University in England. She published, she performed. In her journals from this period, two voices alternate. One is the careful, dazzling student of literature, planning her career like a campaign. The other is something else. I cannot ignore this murderous self, she writes. It is there. I smell it and feel it, but I cannot face it. The wound from her father had not healed. It had only been buried under accomplishment. And what she could not do, what no amount of academic brilliance could ever do, was reach back into 1940 and force a man to stay alive. And then she met the man who looked exactly like the absence she had been carrying. She met him at a party in Cambridge, February 1956, the launch of a new poetry magazine. Sylvia was there. She had been drinking. She had memorized his poems before she ever saw his face. Then she saw him across the room. Tall, dark, loud, the kind of man who looked like he could break something just by entering a room. She walked up to him and recited his own poem back to him from memory. He kissed her. She bit him on the cheek, hard enough to draw blood. He kept her silver earring as a trophy. She wrote about it in her journal that night. She called him the only man she had ever met who could blast Ted in the face. 4 months later, they were married. She was 23. He was 25. She thought she had found her equal. She had also, without knowing it, found something else. A man who would leave. For 6 years, the marriage worked. They moved to Devon, bought a stone house called Court Green. She had 2 children, Frida and Nicholas. She kept beehives in the orchard. Her father's bees brought back to life. She wrote in the mornings before the children woke. Hughes wrote in the afternoons. It looked from the outside like the life she had wanted. Then, in May 1962, a couple came to stay. David and Asia Weville. Asia was beautiful. Hughes noticed. Sylvia noticed Hughes noticing. Within weeks, the affair began. Sylvia found out by answering the phone. She tore the phone cord out of the wall, and then she burned his manuscripts in the garden. By autumn, Hughes was gone. Something happened to her writing that autumn. She started waking at 4 in the morning. Before the children woke, before the milkman came, she wrote at her desk in the cold. And what came out of her was unlike anything she had written before. In October 1962, Sylvia Plath wrote 26 poems, most of them in a single sustained burst. Poems with names like Daddy, Lady Lazarus, The Jailer, Ariel, Fever 103. Most readers think these poems are about Ted Hughes. They are not. Read them carefully, and the figure she is addressing is not the husband who left in 1962. It is the father who left in 1940. Daddy is not a poem about Ted Hughes. It is a poem about a girl who never got to bury her father and spent 30 years digging him up. She had visited his grave that year. It was the first time she had ever stood there. In December 1962, Sylvia moved to London with the children. She found a flat at 23 Fitzroy Road, the same building Yeats had once lived in. She took it as a sign. The winter of 1962 to 63 was the coldest in England in over 100 years. Pipes froze. Power failed. Sylvia could not get the children warm. She could not get herself warm. She had been ill for weeks. Influenza, insomnia. She had finished the Ariel manuscript and could not find a publisher. She wrote to her doctor and asked for help. He came. He prescribed antidepressants. He arranged for a nurse to come Monday morning. Sylvia did not make it to Monday morning. Just before 6 in the morning, on February 11, 1963, she went upstairs. She left bread and milk in the children's room. She sealed the door behind her. She left a note pinned to the pram with the doctor's name and number, and then she went downstairs. By 9 in the morning, Sylvia Plath was dead. She was 30 years old. Ariel was published 2 years later. It made her famous, but the world read those poems as a suicide note. They were not. They were letters to a man who had left 23 years before and never come back.